Hey everyone, Heero here, and today we're gonna look at Aria, a Kawaii Anomaly DPS that relies on ground pounds and extremely powerful blooms to deal massive damage. I'll be discussing her kit, builds, engines, and possible teams. Just as a quick disclaimer though, the footage and information that will be shown is from the creator experience server, so things can still change when her banner drops. Let's first start by discussing her unique resource, Fandom Power, which is indicated under her health bar and has a max of 8 stacks. And it's mainly gained through Aria's abilities, like those shown on screen or Ether Veil activations, with stacks of it being required to quickly spam her full power charge attack and blooms. It's also worth noting that she has a unique regular special attack that you can combo into after a basic attack 4, assist follow-up, chain attack, or ult, that generates 1 Fandom Power. So make sure to use it often to maximize Fandom Power generation. But with that in mind, this ability does give us a simple yet loopable combo of basic attack 4 into special attack, which is decent for applying Ether Anomaly and generating Phantom Power during ability downtimes. Now she also has 2 EX specials that is part of a 2-part combo, starting with EX Special Fall into Delusion, ending with Instantly Hooked, with Instantly Hooked only being usable if you have 40 energy after using Fall into Delusion. Just note, both of these attacks will generate 3 Phantom Power for a total of 6. But you should not be pressured into using energy for Instantly Hooked if it will cause you to overcap on Phantom Power. Now with those abilities out of the way, you can finally look at her special charge attack, which has 3 different levels of charge depending on how long you hold the basic attack button, with each level dealing more damage and anomaly buildup. But this attack can also consume stacks of Phantom Power, with each stack consumed instantly increasing the charge level of this attack by 1, with it consuming up to 2 Phantom Power to instantly activate a max level 3 charge attack. This is all on top of each stack consumed, increasing the charge attack's Ether Anomaly buildup by 10%, with a max increase of 20% with 2 Phantom Power consumed. Though with that in mind, it's worth noting that you can instantly combo into a level 3 charge attack after using most of Aria's abilities just by holding the basic attack button if she has at least 2 Phantom Power. This makes stringing together combos with Aria extremely simple and seamless, especially compared to some agents, since you can instantly go from building her Phantom Power with any ability to dealing damage with her charge attack. Speaking of which, her level 3 charge is her main way of dealing damage, since thanks to her core passive, it's the only way she can trigger her blooms, and it's what makes her an bloom DPS. Now her blooms are a bit unique compared to Vivian's, since instead of anomaly proficiency, Aria's blooms scale off her anomaly mastery instead, with every 10 points of it increasing her bloom's damage multipliers. Aside from that, it follows similar mechanics to Vivian's blooms. It has unique multipliers per different elemental anomaly, and it calculates its damage based on the original anomaly damage dealt. Though it's worth noting that its damage scaling relies on Aria's out-of-battle initial anomaly mastery, which is the value you see in her character screen. So in battle anomaly mastery buffs, like from Alice's Wenjin, do not affect its multipliers. And its damage can still heavily be influenced by the stats of other agents, since it uses the original damage of an anomaly for damage calculation. So if you're running her with other anomaly units, it's very important that these units are well built, otherwise it will hold back Aria's damage. Though, this should only really matter for disorder teams. Now, her core passive also has other bonuses, like providing a permanent 90 AP buff. But more importantly, it also increases the damage of her blooms by 50%, or 1.5 times of its original damage during stuns. And since this is on top of the stun damage multiplier, this of course results in really big bloom damage, increasing the value of stunners for Aria despite her being an anomaly unit. As for her ult, it deals a bit of damage, but more importantly, it's the only way she can activate her Moment of Delusion state. This is a special state that lasts for 15 seconds, which enhances her level 3 charge attack while it's active, allowing it to deal more damage and anomaly buildup. Aside from this, it also activates her Ether Veil Delusion Reprise, which is the same as Suna's, with it giving 50 attack, and thanks to her additional ability, it also gives 4 Phantom Power after each activation. Though more importantly, it gives her 3 stacks of all-out cheering after the state's activation, which her charge attack can consume instead of Phantom Power. However, unlike Phantom Power, each stack of all-out cheering consumed increases the charge level of her attack by 2, so 1 stack is an instant level 3 charge attack. But just note, all-out cheering stacks will be converted into 2 Phantom Power stacks if she uses her ult while still having stacks active or once the Moment of Delusion state expires. And try to only use her ult when she has at max 4 Phantom Power to ensure that the Phantom Power she gets from activating her Ether Veil doesn't go to waste. Plus, by doing this, it also allows her to do at least 7 level 3 enhanced charge attacks during her Moment of Delusion state for massive Abloom damage. As for her additional ability, it needs a stun, support, or Angels of Delusion unit to activate. And like I said, it gives her 4 Phantom Power every time an Ether Veil is activated with a cooldown of 1 second, which is on top of increasing Corruption duration by 3 seconds to make triggering Ablooms easier. As her talent prio, level up her core skill first, then her basics, then her skill on ult, then her dodge, and finally assist. However, it's worth noting that since most of her damage comes from Ablooms, you only really need to level up her core passive, but you can level up her other abilities if you want to min-max her damage. But with her kit out of the way, let's talk about her Mindscapes. Her M1 enables Aria's basics, specials, and EX specials to ignore 10% of a target's Ether Anomaly build-up res while enabling her Ablooms to crit, with each Abloom having a base crit rate and damage of 25%. But each point of initial Anomaly mastery she has above 100 will give her 0.5% crit rate. Overall, it's a pretty insane Mindscape for Ether Anomaly building and her overall damage due to Ablooms now critting. But just note, she will need to have 250 initial Anomaly mastery for her Ablooms to have 100% crit rate, which will need her signature. As for her M2, it makes it so that her Ablooms now ignore 16% enemy defense, and during her Moment of Delusion state, it ignores an additional 8% defense for a total of a 24% def ignore, which of course is just more Aria damage, plain and simple. While her M4 enables her Ablooms to now give 4 energy and 70 decibels, with this effect having an internal cooldown of 10 seconds, which sadly isn't really too special, but it does allow her to get her ult and EX specials back faster. And finally for her M6, it gives Aria 1200 decibels at the start of combat. But more importantly, after entering Moment of Delusion for the first time in battle, Aria will permanently stay in the state for the rest of the battle. And during the state, not only does her enhanced charge attack and ultimate now also deal 40% more damage, but every time an enemy is inflicted with an anomaly, she gains 1 stack of all-out cheering, with the effect having a cooldown of 6 seconds. But if she already has 3 stacks of all-out cheering, it gets converted into 2 Phantom Power stacks instead. And with her Mindscapes out of the way, let's talk about her possible Wenjins. Aria's signature that has a very familiar name gives 30% Anomaly Mastery with its main stat and 90 AP just by equipping it. Aside from this, if the equipper is an Ether unit and either goes on field or uses a special or EX special attack, they deal 20% more damage to enemies afflicted with anomaly statuses like Corruption, and the damage of the anomalies they trigger increases by 10%. Just note this buff has a 15-second refreshable duration, but will instantly expire if the equipper leaves the field. Overall, it's a pretty big damage buff for Aria that can buff all anomaly-related damage, and the neat thing is that this Wenjin can still buff her damage during quick swapping since it only removes the buff once she leaves the field, not when she becomes the inactive character. It's also the only Wenjin that can increase the multipliers of her Abloom, since it's the only one that buffs her initial out-of-battle anomaly mastery. But with that being said, she does have quite a bit of premium and easy-to-access alternatives, with good general use 5 stars being Flight of Fancy or Fusion Compiler. With Fusion Compiler of course giving pen ratio, attack, and AP, so it's good for damage. While Flight of Fancy significantly increases her anomaly build-up rate while providing her up to 210 AP with its main stat and at full stacks of its passive, which she can easily maintain. Time Weaver and Practice Perfection can work too, but only if you're using her in a Disorder team and they're not recommended for other teams. With Time Weaver of course providing loss of attack, AP, and a good disorder damage buff. While Practice Perfection is basically just a big Anomaly Mastery and attack stat stick. However, like I said, since it only gives its Anomaly Mastery buff in battle, it does not affect the damage of Aria's Ablooms, which significantly lowers its value for her. However, in disorder teams, where you wanna reapply anomalies as soon as possible, it does become pretty useful for consistent damage. For 4-star options, it's the usual 3. Electro Lip Gloss is good for AP, attack, and damage buffs when enemies are afflicted with anomalies, which will be most of the time. Weeping Gemini is a great free-to-play option with its main stat and it giving lots of AP just by inflicting anomalies. While Rainforest Gourmet is a decent option for AP and attack, since she does spend her energy pretty often, allowing for good uptime on its passive. Out of all of these, the best would be Electro Lip Gloss since it has the best buff uptime. And an important note for Weeping Gemini is that since Aria's best teams will have a stunner, it can mess with its uptime, so keep that in mind. But with possible vengeance out of the way, let's talk about drive discs. For the 4-piece set, she has 2 options, and which one you use will heavily depend on the team you plan to run her in, with her choices being Phaeton's Melody and Shining Aria. Shining Aria gives her an ether damage buff with its 2-piece, while increasing her AP after hitting an enemy with a basic. And when an enemy is stunned, it gives her a pretty good damage buff. It's the option that requires you to run a stunner, so it's the best and preferred option for hyper carry Aria teams. But can also work in disorder teams if you plan to run a stunner instead of a support. As for Phaeton's Melody, not only does it give Anomaly Mastery, it also gives Anomaly Proficiency and a pretty good damage buff just by using EX specials with her and her party. Overall, it's a great option for any team, especially ones where Aria won't be ran with a stunner like double support teams or most disorder comps. However, it's important to note that you need to play a bit more quick swappy if you want to capitalize on its short duration damage buff. As for the 2-piece set, it's pretty simple. If you're running Aria as the 4-piece set, Phaeton's Melody is required since it's the only disc set that gives Anomaly Mastery. But if you're running Phaeton's Melody as the 4-piece instead, sets like Astral Voice or Hormone Punk for attack, Freedom Blues or Chaos Jazz for AP, or Chaotic Metal or Shining Aria for bonus ether damage, or Puffer Electro for pen can work. So just use the one with the best substats. But with their possible drive discs out of the way, let's talk about stats. For main stats, you want AP for slot 4, attack, pen, or ether damage for slot 5, and finally AM for slot 6. Fairly simple. AM for slot 6 is required since, like I kept yapping about, it's needed to make her Ablooms deal more damage. While for slot 5, ether damage is good for general use, pen ratio is exceptional if you plan to run her with any pen source like Fusion Compiler, while attack is great if it has good substats. Overall, the damage difference between the 3 isn't too big, so just choose the one with the best substats. As for substat priority, just like any anomaly unit, you only really need to focus on AP first, then attack, then optionally a bit of flat pen and attack. While for minimum stat recommendation, I recommend around 320 to 400 AP and 2300 to 2600 attack depending on your Wenjin and substat luck. But honestly, since you're only going for AP and attack, just get as much of both as you can, with you of course prioritizing AP. And going for more than what's on screen is advised if you have the ability to do so. With your stats out of the way, let's talk about possible teammates. Now, due to how Aria is designed, she fits in a lot of potential teams, not just your typical anomaly disorder comp, with her benefiting the most from being used in a hyper carry setup with a stunner, but due to her fast ether anomaly buildup and high Abloom damage, she can still work in your standard disorder team. So she is a very versatile character with a lot of teammate options. Though with that being said, hypercarry comps are her best and intended type of team where the main focus is dealing damage through her Ablooms instead of disorders, while capitalizing on them being buffed during stuns. So with that in mind, her best hyper carry setup is one with Yuzuha or Suna as the support, and a stunner like Lycon, Chingy, Dialin, or Trigger. Yuzuha of course being great due to her insane anomaly buffs, while Suna in general is just one of her best supports, especially for a hyper carry setup, which is due to her good off-field damage, frequent Ether Veil activations for fast fandom power charging, her bonus stun damage multiplier that enables Aria's stun preferred playstyle, plus they also have unique joint animations that I wished more agents in the game had. But if you don't have these two, Zhao works as a good free-to-play alternative to Suna, but just note, her Ether Veil activation is slower compared to hers, meaning less fandom power, with other alternatives of course being Astra, Nicole, Caesar, Lucy, or an M1 Rina. As for stunners, Trigger with her off-field stunning and permanent stun damage multiplier, post-buff Lycon now having a damage vulnerability debuff and off-field stunning capabilities, or Qingyi for her bonus stun damage multiplier are all pretty good options. But if you don't have them, Koleda or an M6 Polkruk can work as well, but sadly, they do not provide as much beneficial buffs as other stunners. While Dialin can also work despite Aria not being able to activate her additional ability, which is mainly due to her giving Aria more ults for more blooms, combined with her fast stunning capabilities enabling more damage for Aria. However, sadly without her additional ability, you lose out on a ton of Dialin's personal damage and a huge 40% damage buff for the team. So yes, they can work together, but I personally recommend saving her for other teams instead. Just note, Nangong Yu is probably gonna be her best stunner, judging by how Hoyo seems to be pushing for the full Idol team. But I'll refrain from talking too much about her since the details of her kit haven't officially been revealed yet. But moving on, she can also work in a duo support team with a combination of any of the supports I mentioned earlier. And the neat thing is, the buffs from two supports is enough to make out for losing out on Aria's bonus damage during stuns. Just note, it is recommended to run Aria with Phaeton's Melody in this team. Now despite being intended for a stun-oriented playstyle, Aria can still function pretty well in disorder teams due to her fast Ether anomaly buildup and high bloom damage. These teams enables Aria to take advantage of other elements for high bloom damage while also dealing good disorder damage of her own. Just note that a non-Bernice plus Aria disorder team will most likely have to be played in a more quick swap fashion to accommodate for the fact that Aria and other Anomaly DPSs do want some field time. And it is ideal for you to run a support in these teams rather than a stunner to effectively buff both Anomaly DPSs. Which sadly means they'll lose out on Aria's bonus bloom damage during stuns, but that can all change when Nangong Yu comes out. Now for a fun, unorthodox meme team you can try, you can pair Aria with Vivian to form the first bloom damage focused team, with the team focused on spamming as much blooms as possible while taking permanent advantage of Corruption's damage over time, which greatly benefits from Vivian's ability to buff its damage. And since Corruption will have pretty much permanent uptime in this team, players can give Vivian an attack slot 6 for higher bloom damage or an ER slot 6 for more frequent blooms instead of an Anomaly Mastery one. The team was overall pretty fun and was pretty reliable in clearing endgame content despite being far from the norm, but just note, it won't perform as good as Aria's best teams. But that's about it. Personally, I'm definitely gonna be pulling for Aria simply because I found her pretty fun to play. Plus, I want to complete the most expensive idol animation in the game. Get it? Because it's an idol animation and they're idols. But anyway, make sure to tell me what you think about her in the comments below, and don't forget to hit me with a like and a sub. Now onto the showcases, and as usual, forgive my skill issue, I'm pretty terrible at this game due to my aging motor skills.